What is up, Speezinators? I'm your host Nathan Spees, and welcome to my first collection video of 2023. This collection video will be on all these different animal figurines from the company Schleich, or Schleich, however you want to pronounce it. For those of you who don't know what Schleich is, it's a German-based company that makes these, solid animal figurines. So, they're these really realistic-looking animals, and, they're, solid plastic. They're almost like models, too. You can use them as models. But yeah. I've been collecting these for a little over 10 years now, and I thought now would be a really good time to show off the entire collection. Now, since there's a lot of these, I'm going to stop rambling and get right onto the collection. Oh wait, a couple things to note before I start showing you guys the collection. Number one, I'm not going to be telling you guys the dates when these figures were created because some of these figures don't have any dates on them, so I don't know when they were created. And also, that would take way too long. Number two, I'm not going to be telling you guys where I got each and every figure from because, again, that will take way too long. And also, some of these figures were gifts, so I don't know where they came from. But a good majority of them came from Tractor Supply. Other ones came from Walmart, Target, Amazon, eBay, and even Toys R Us when they were still open. Oh, one more thing I forgot to mention is that some of these figures are not actually Schleich. They're from other companies like Safari LTD or Papo, but I'm still including them in this video because they're basically the exact same as any other Schleich figure. And I thought it would be kind of a waste of time to do separate videos on those companies when I could just throw them into this video. Alright, so with all that out of the way, let's actually get to the collection. I'm going to start with the wildlife over here. Then we're going to go to marine life, farm animals, and dinosaurs, and then other miscellaneous things. And there's Theo. So yeah, let's get started with the wildlife. Alright, so I'm first going to start with the pachyderm animals. These are animals like elephants, rhinos, hippos, etc. So I'm going to start with the elephants first. And I am going to move pretty quickly through these just because there's a lot of figures. But what better figure to start off this collection than with this guy. This is the Schleich Fighter Elephant. He's like a armored elephant. He's really, really cool. Really, really expensive too. He'll run you a pretty penny on eBay. And yeah, and I also have the guy that came with them, except, I don't know if you can see this, but his weapon is broken. But he goes on top. And so yeah, that's kind of the start. Come on, focus, focus. There we go. That's the start of our Schleich collection. And this guy's actually bigger than any regular elephant from Schleich. For example, we have the old version of the Schleich female African elephant. And you can just see how small this elephant is compared to this one. Yeah, that was actually one of the first Schleich figures I ever got. And then we have the new male African elephant. This is a recent figure you can buy right now. Yeah, really, really cool, really detailed. Love the pose. We have the newer Asian elephant. This is the female. I do not have a male. Even smaller than the African elephants. Speaking of small, we have the old version of the baby African elephant. Very, very small. And then we also have the newer version of the baby African elephant. And then we have an older version of the baby Asian elephant. I was never really a big fan of this one because I think it looks kind of creepy. Alright, so that's it for the elephants. Now let's move on to the rhinos. So the first rhino I have is actually not a Schleich figure. It's a Safari LTD white rhino. Very old figure. Oops. knocking stuff over. There you go. Let me move the camera a little bit. There you go. We have the Schleich black rhino, even though it looks more like a white rhino. We have the Schleich Indian rhino, one of my favorites. And then we have the Safari LTD Sumatran rhino. Alright, now we're moving on to the hippos. First up, we have one of the oldest Schleich figures, which is this open mouth hippo. Super, super old. Then we have a more modern version of the open mouth hippo. This is not the newest one, but it's one of the newer ones. And then we also have a baby hippo. And then last but not least, we have a Safari LTD pygmy hippo. Not sure if you can see that. There you go. Alright, next up we have some animals that aren't really considered pachyderms, but I'm throwing them in here just because. We have the Safari LTD Malayan tapir. And then we have the Schleich baby tapir, one of the newer figures. Very cute. And last but not least, we have the Schleich anteater, giant anteater. So that's all the Schleich pachyderms that I have. Now let's move on to the hoofstock. Alright, now we're going to do hoofstock. We're going to start with the giraffes. First up, we have the Blip Toys giraffe. Not Schleich, but still pretty cool. Next up, we have the Schleich giraffe. This is an older model. Then we have the Schleich baby giraffe. And because they're part giraffe, I decided to throw in the okapi. Fun fact about okapis, they're actually related to giraffes even though they have zebra butts. Because if you see, they have the horns on their head. Speaking of zebras, let's go over the zebras. First up, we have the older version of the male zebra. Next up, we have a newer female zebra. I just got this one recently. Then we have the baby zebra. Alright, now let's do camels. First up, we have the Schleich Bactrian camel, the two-hump camel. Then we have the baby Bactrian camel. Next, we have a dromedary camel. And then we have a Safari LTD dromedary camel. Not really a big fan of this one. Next up, we have some African hoofstock. We have what's probably one of my favorite Schleich figures of all time, the Thompson Gazelle. Man, I've been looking for this one for so long, and then I finally found it and I was the happiest kid on earth. Then we have the Greater Kudu. Then we have another one of my favorites, the Oryx Gemsbach, whatever you want to call it. I freaking love this figure. Next, we have some larger hoofstock animals. We have the yak. And we have the bison. Very, very old figure. Then we have the male moose. Very cool. And we also have a baby moose. I do not have a female moose because I could not find one. And I don't know if they ever did make one. Then we have a red deer. This one's got a little bit of paint on it and some Sharpie, but we cleaned it off a while back. And lastly, we have some pigs. We have a warthog. This one is the male warthog. And then we have the female warthog. These are the older versions of the warthogs. And then finally, we have the wild boar. So that's all the hoof stock. Now let's move on to the cats and dogs. Alright, now we're moving on to the big cats and canines. We're going to start with the lions. So first up we have the original male lion from Schleich. We have the new male lion from Schleich. He's a lot more angry. We have the old version of the female lion. We have the old version of the lion cub. And then I have another one of those lion cubs, because I got it by accident. Alright, now we're going to move on to the tigers. First up we have the male orange tiger. This is the older version. We have the female orange tiger, or tigress, if you want to call it. I have a Blip Toys tiger. Not sure what kind of tiger this is, but it looks really weird. And then I have a version of a baby tiger that's orange. I also have the same male tiger, but in a white version, making it a white tiger. And then I have a baby version of that as well. Next up we have the cheetahs. We have the old version of the Schleich cheetah. We have a new version of the Schleich cheetah. Then we have the old version of the baby cheetah. Next we have a new version of a jaguar. I also have a Safari LTD panther. I have a Safari LTD snow leopard, as well as a baby version of the same leopard. I have a Schleich leopard. And I have a baby leopard from Schleich. Then I have a set of 3 of these Blip Toys lions. I don't know if they're supposed to be mountain lions or regular lions, but I got them in the collection. And then the last 2 wildcats that I have are a lynx, the old version of the lynx, and a baby lynx. Moving on to dogs, we have the Safari LTD Fennec Fox, the Safari LTD Red Fox, the Papo hyena, spotted hyena, I don't know why I stuttered, and then the Safari LTD African Painted Dog. And then we have the wolves. I only have 3 wolves. I have the old version of the gray wolf. I have an Arctic wolf right here. And then I have another gray wolf, but this one he's angry. So that's all the big cats and canines. Now let's move on to the bears. Alright, so I don't have too many bears, but I do have enough to give them their own section of the video. So we're first going to start with grizzly bears. We have the Treehouse Kids grizzly bear, the original Schleich grizzly bear, very old and beaten. We have a newer Schleich grizzly bear, very ferocious looking. We have the female grizzly bear. And we have a baby grizzly bear. Next up we have black bears. We have the Treehouse Kids black bear. Very weird looking. And then we have the Schleich sloth bear. Next up are polar bears. We have the Schleich polar bear. This is the older version. And we have the newer version of the Schleich polar bear. And then we have a baby polar bear. And finally we have pandas. We have the Blip Toys panda, the Schleich panda eating bamboo, and a very old, kind of weird looking baby panda. Alright, so that's all the bears. Now let's move on to the primates, apes, and whatever other animals that are classified as monkeys, basically. Now we're moving on to the primates, apes, monkeys, whatever you want to call them. We're going to start with the gorillas first. First up we have a Blip Toys gorilla. Very old, very weird looking. We have the Schleich baby gorilla. We have the Schleich female gorilla, who has a baby on her back. And last but not least, we have the Schleich male gorilla, the older version, who also has a silverback. Next up are orangutans. We have the Papo male orangutan. Then we have the Safari LTD female orangutan with a baby. And then we have the Schleich orangutan, which has an articulated arm. Very cool. Next up are chimpanzees. We have the old version of the male chimpanzee, the old version of the female chimpanzee, and the old version of the baby chimpanzee. Then we have a slightly older version of the chimpanzee with the baby. It's holding a baby, actually. And then we have a newer chimpanzee right here, which I just got recently. Next up are the mandrills. We have the male mandrill. And then we have the female mandrill with the baby. I'm pretty sure those are bootleg though, because the paint's not really that good. Though I could be wrong. Next we have sloths. We have the Schleich sloth right here. And the Safari LTD Linnaeus two-toed sloth. Next up we have the Safari LTD ring-tailed lemur. Then we have the Safari LTD spider monkey. And last but not least, we have the Schleich proboscis monkey, aka the monkey that has the big ugly Squidward nose. So that's it for the primates. Now we're going to move on to the small mammals / miscellaneous mammals. Last but not least, for the mammals, we have the small mammals or miscellaneous animals. We're first going to start with the meerkats. So we have the Safari LTC meerkat. This is a bigger version. Then we have the Schleich meerkat, which is the older version, slightly smaller. And then we have the newer Schleich meerkats, which are really tiny, really small. You probably can barely see them. They all came in the meerkat playset, which you will see a little bit later. There you go. Next up we have the Schleich raccoon. This is the female raccoon. And we have a set of raccoon triplets to go with the female. Next up we have the hedgehog, Schleich hedgehog. And just like the raccoon, this hedgehog also has triplets. Next up we have a beaver from the company Mojo. Never heard of it, but whatever. Then we have the Safari LTC American porcupine. We have the Schleich Wolverine, not the superhero, the animal. And then we have the Schleich European badger. Then we have the Schleich Slow Loris. Never heard of it, but I got the figure. Next up we have the Schleich Quokka. I don't know how you pronounce it, but I got it. Then we have the Schleich Platypus and the Schleich Wombat. Then we have the Safari LTC Aardvark, very big, but not as big as the Safari LTC Giant Armadillo. This thing is massive. Next up we have the Safari LTC Red Panda. And last but not least, to end off the mammals, we have the Schleich Red Kangaroo with the Joey. So that's it for all the mammals. Now we're going to move on to the birds. Okay, so for the birds, I don't have that many birds, but again, just like the bears, I have enough for their own section. And I especially have to give them their own section because of this big guy. The Safari LTD Bald Eagle. I got that as a graduation gift since my high school mascot was a bald eagle, and I played the mascot in high school. We also have the Schleich Bald Eagle right here. We also have the Schleich Peregrine Falcon and the Schleich Snow Owl. Next up we have the Schleich Peacock. Very nice figure. And then we have the Safari LTD Flamingo. Then we have the Safari LTD Cassowary, aka the modern Velociraptor. And we have the Safari LTD Lorikeet. I don't like lorikeets, but I do like the figure. Next up we have the Schleich Blue and Gold Macaw. Very nice figure. We have the Schleich Stork, White Stork. We have the old version of the Schleich Pelican, which has a fish in its mouth. I don't know if you can see that. It has a fish in its mouth. Then we have the Schleich Vulture. And last but not least, we have the biggest bird on Earth, the ostrich. The old version of the Schleich ostrich. So that's all the birds. Now we're going to move on to the last part of the wildlife section, which is the reptiles, amphibians, and insects. I actually have less reptiles, amphibians, and insects than I do birds, but the ones I do have are pretty impressive. First up, we have the Schleich Saltwater Crocodile, the old version. We have the Safari LTD White Alligator. I call him King Louie because he looks like the one from the Louisville Zoo. Then we have the Safari LTD Cayman, which is like a small version of a gator or crocodile. Then we have the Safari LTD Komodo Dragon. I like this one more than the Schleich figure because it looks more like a reptile. The Schleich one kind of has, I don't know, the Schleich one looks kind of weird. It's not focusing, there you go. Then we have the old version of the Schleich Tortoise. Then we have the Schleich Iguana, one of the newer figures. And last but not least, for reptiles, we have the Schleich Pagoa Lizard. I don't know if that's how you pronounce it, but I like to call it Screaming Lizard because it looks like it's screaming. Now for amphibians, we have the Safari LTD Red-Eyed Tree Frog with baby. Very cool. And last but not least, we have an insect, which is the Schleich Millipede? Centipede? I don't know what it is, but it's an insect. Really creepy one, too. Alright, so that wraps up the wildlife portion of the Schleich collection. Now let's move on to the marine life. Alright, so my marine life collection isn't as big as my wildlife collection, but it's still a pretty decent size. So we're going to start with the sharks. First up, we have the Safari LTD Great White Shark. Next, we have the Safari LTD Hammerhead Shark. Next, we have a shark from an unknown company. And we have the Safari LTD Shark Ray. Next up we have the Schleich octopus. And then an octopus from an unknown company. Slightly darker color. Next up we have a sea turtle, very impressive sea turtle, from an unknown company. Next up we have a Schleich manatee. Next up we have a Safari LTD sea lion. Then we have a Schleich seal, gray seal, I think. Then we have a Safari LTD otter. There's the Safari LTD seahorse, very large seahorse. We have the Schleich manta ray, except its tail's broken. We have the Safari LTD squid, which has these really long tentacles, and it's like a rubber material. Then we have Dory, also known as the Safari LTD blue tang. Then we have a spotted stingray from an unknown company. Then we have another spotted stingray from an unknown company. And then we have a dolphin from an unknown company. And if there's any of you guys who are confused why I didn't include penguins in the bird part, I consider penguins more aquatic than wildlife. So here's all the penguins in my collection. We have the Schleich emperor penguin. We have the Schleich female emperor penguin with baby. Then we have the Schleich 4 baby emperor penguins. Then we have this penguin from an unknown company. Another penguin from an unknown company. And yet another penguin from an unknown company, but this time it's on its belly. Then we have this Galapagos penguin. Then we have a penguin on its belly. Then we have a Gentoo penguin. And finally we have an African penguin. So that's it for the marine life. Now I'm going to show you the farm animals and domesticated animals. Now as for farm life, I definitely have a lot more farm life than marine life, but still not as much as I do wildlife. But let me start this off with a disclaimer. I know the most popular Schleich animals are horses. However, I don't actually own any Schleich horses. And it's not that I hate the horses, it's just that I was more into the wildlife than I was for the horses. I do plan on getting Schleich horses in the future, but I do have some horses in my collection, though they're not Schleich. We have the Blip Toys horses. We have this one, and then we have the baby. Next up we have cows. We have the Blip Toys Texas Longhorn. We have the Schleich Simmental Bull, I don't know how you pronounce it. Then we have the Blip Toys Holstein Cattle, or cow, black and white cow. Then we have a donkey, also known as a jackass. Then we have the Schleich pig, older version of a pig. Then we have a newer Schleich pig with spots, slightly smaller. We have a Blip Toys piglet. And then we have some more little Schleich piglets that came with this pig. We have that one, and we have this one. Then we have a Blip Toys sheep, and a Blip Toys lamb. And then we have a Schleich goat, just a regular old goat. Next up we have the Schleich llama, and the Schleich alpaca. Next up we have a Schleich turkey, not a Thanksgiving turkey. We have a Blip Toys chicken. We have a Schleich rooster and a regular chicken from Schleich. And then I have 2 little chicks that came in a playset with the 2 adults. Now for rabbits, I have this orange and white floppy-eared rabbit. I have this wild hare. I have this black and white rabbit. I have this brown and white rabbit that's laying down. And then I have this white and gray rabbit. So that's it for the farm life, but I also have some cats and dogs. We have the Schleich Golden Retriever, the Schleich Pug Puppies, the Schleich Black Pug, rest in peace Stella, we had to put her down back in October, rest in peace. And then we have this random dog, not sure where this came from. As for cats, I have this Schleich Maine Coon, also known as a floof. I have this black and white cat. I have this orange striped cat. I have this calico cat. Alright, so the last figures I'm going to be showing off are dinosaurs. Now these are all Schleich dinosaurs. These are no Papo or Safari dinosaurs. They're all Schleich, so you don't have to worry about that. First up we have the old version of the Schleich Allosaurus. We have the old mini Schleich Brachiosaurus. We have the mini Schleich blue and green Carnotaurus. We have the mini red Giganotosaurus. We have the Schleich Triceratops, newer one. The Schleich Spinosaurus. He actually has a moving mouth. The Schleich Apatosaurus. And last but not least, the Schleich T-Rex, one of the most iconic Schleich figures of all time, and he also has a moving mouth. Alright, so that's all my Schleich figures. Now I'm going to show you playsets and a couple of other miscellaneous items that are related to Schleich. Alright, I'm in my room now, but don't question that, because now we have the Schleich playsets. The first one we have is this bunny hut thing. This was the first Schleich playset I ever got. Then we have the Schleich cat tree, which came with a couple cats. And then we have this little piece of lettuce that came with a couple of pigs. We have the meerkat exhibit, meerkat playset, which came with the tiny meerkats and that centipede. And then finally we have the chicken coop, which came with the rooster and the chicken and the hens and the chicks. And then over here we have the Schleich I think it's a catalog. And like it shows off the stuff that Schleich came out with, and I actually have some check marks in there. Yeah, you see right there. Of all the figures I have. This thing is really old. It's from 2011. And it's still in pretty good condition, except the cover fell off. It fell off a couple weeks ago. Yeah, that's pretty sad. But that's all my Schleich playsets. One last thing to mention and show off in my Schleich collection. So about 10 years ago, Schleich started to make figures based off licensed characters, such as the Smurfs. While I don't have any of the Smurf figures because I'm not a Smurfs fan, I do have a figure that they made of another popular character. It's none other than Jeffrey the Giraffe, the mascot from Toys R Us. This is my favorite Schleich item they ever made. Yeah, this thing is so awesome. It's so detailed. And also, it was one of the last pieces of Jeffrey merchandise made before Toys R Us went out of business in 2018. Jeffrey is also the only Schleich figure that I do not display with the rest of my Schleich figures, only because of how special he is. And I don't think there's any better way to conclude this video than Jeffrey the Giraffe himself. If you own this figure, consider yourself pretty lucky, because you have one of the last pieces of Toys R Us merchandise ever made. So this concludes my entire Schleich figure collection. I hope you guys really enjoyed this video. I had a lot of fun making it. Let me know if you want to see some content with these Schleich animals. I'd be happy to do it. If you have any questions, let me know in the comment section down below. Please like, share, and subscribe. And thanks for watching. Bye-bye!